There you go. I can send this to Sue if you want to complete your thought.
Right. So you're saying, what should we do to do something new? We have to connect with any other movement that is self-professedly fighting for liberation across the political spectrum. What we need to do is set aside our prejudices, suspend judgment, accept that there's something that we don't understand and that we don't know about the other person's perspective, and unite all the people who are fighting on, specifically in places like college campuses. Big ones would be racism, gender, social justice issues. I know that a lot of us are perceived as like frail snowflakes, social justice warriors, and there's a lot that, the youths are doing wrong and not understanding in terms of like the interconnectedness of other things, and maybe are like too distracted on like some of these fronts. But it's very important that we begin to understand just what touches people emotionally, and see the ways in which our cause connects to their cause. So if we understand that 9/11 is essentially based in the supremacy of the military industrial complex, which just feeds itself for its own benefit, which is a system based on violence and the plundering of the resources of the entire world, which in itself is a system based on racism, because the United States of America was built on the back of slaves, and it is still built on the back of slaves. People in prisons are slaves to this day. Our entire technology comes from the exploitation and the slavery of people in Congo. The entire world order at this point in time, because of like the geopolitical balances with like Russia and China and etc., rests on the existence of Israel, which is a racist apartheid state. We have to begin to understand all of these issues and it as interconnected. And even if some of the things that I may have said may be extremely uncomfortable, because maybe some of us are Zionists and believe that Israel has a right to exist and a right to defend itself. Suspend judgment. Maybe there's a mistake there. Maybe there's a mistake there. Maybe what we have to do is reach the youths, reach the new energy, see what hurts there inside, and sew together everything that power structures that are smart, because they've been playing the MK Ultra COINTELPRO game for a long time and they have all of our data. So you have to imagine that this is a game where we have cards in our hands and they, right, have cards in their hands. We cannot see their cards. They can see our cards. But we have a choice to also see and show each other all of our cards as well. And there's more of us. So, really, the quantic jump that we have to do, game theory wise, and I'm not a game theorist and I wouldn't be able to explain this theoretically at all, but some people are game theorists. We have to sew together everything that is being ripped among us in terms of opinion, in terms of perception, in terms of feeling. We tend to shame each other for feeling so deeply about certain issues instead of others. Like, why is my niece or nephew trans and won't pay attention to the collapsing economy? There is something there. Why, like, nobody will listen to like Building 7, but maybe I got vaccinated because I thought that was a good idea, and I won't listen to my dad who's like saying like no, don't get vaccinated or something, right? Like, each of us has blind spots. That's the key. Accept that we have blind spots and seek the people who feel deeply and who understand that ultimately there is a mechanism of division taking place, and that undoing the mechanism of division is the foremost priority, such that eventually once we start doing that at a in an efficient enough way, then we can coordinate attention and we can focus mass attention. And that will happen if the leaders of 9/11 truth channels and the leaders of COVID truth channels and the leaders of um, Pedophiles International Incorporated channels and the leaders of Let's Save Cash and not move to complete like virtual money channels, all of these channels together investigating different aspects of international power abuse can have one big conference and be like, okay, now all of us on our all of our respective channels are going to talk about the synthesis, like we're going to describe the problem of power as we see it. And we're going to try to come up with a description that somehow fits all of these different issues that we all care about and that our audiences care about. That would be a big checkmate. That would start a process that they have no way to stop. They have no way to stop that process. They have no way to really undermine the creation of links. They have no way to undermine the it's like creating new synapses in a brain. Like you are strengthening the ecosystem of liberation activism by making sure that no one cell it's on its own. And right now that's really what's happening. Like even within the truth movement, people don't agree with this. Bah, we're not talking to each other anymore. Bah, I'm just gonna keep doing my thing. Yes, everybody has egos, everybody is human. We understand why that happens, but we have to resist that within ourselves. So that's a lot of self work as well, work within one's own soul. Um, oh, we have hands up for questions. Yes, pardon me. Yes, please.
You're good.
Um,
One, I once met Sue's back. Sue, I'm recording. I gotcha. I have three comments and two questions. One, it sounds like you should have had a psychology degree. I'd love to hear you in a
uh,
conversation with Fran Shore and Marty Hopper if you know who they are.
I
Or,
would love, I know French has done a lot of work in trying to describe exactly this problem, and
mm-hmm.
I've read most of it.
I love the idea of reverse engineering this web that they've wove. You said so many things that are just really dense, like really good stuff. Um, a couple other comments. You're showing World Trade Center 7 and then asking what it is. What we've typically done is, did you know a third tower fell on 9/11? Kind of gave it too much context. But just showing 7, they have no idea what it is, and then you tell them what it is, and it sounded like three professors were truly humbled by that. Three or four that were truly humbled by that. That's great. Well, yeah.
Yeah, more or less. Even those professors then I think became overwhelmed by um, understanding really what it means to take personal responsibility for knowing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I agree, it's sometimes too much. Like I like although I have like so much anger and frustration, I just like want to punch people in the face. I also understand that there are very deep personal intimate wounds that are connected to this thing unless we have a lot more empathy with ourselves first and foremost and with other people and trying to understand just how deep this wound cuts. Like for me, devastated me, it still is. Like it's undoing my soul in ways that go all the way back to like my childhood traumas. Like we have to start thinking about it in that way because this has to do with control that was exerted upon us as children, the way that we have learned to accept it or not accept it. And all those things are going to be triggered as we go along. And this happens for with different things for different people. So gender issues will hit people a lot harder than others. COVID will have this effect on some more than others. But we have to recognize like the humanity behind those deep feelings, um,
Yeah, I've heard
and
us say if
work
we
from there.
if we treat them more like they're victims of this propaganda than trying to club them over the head with evidence, try to really empathize with them is what you're saying. That makes sense.
Yes, and sometimes that empathy has to come. So one of the things that I wanted to do, and I think I wasn't, I'm still not sure that I'm fully able to do, but you have to go ask that person, what is it that gets you? What makes you suffer? What makes you angry of this world? Like if you go to people in the ghettos of major American cities, they will probably still answer racism. And a lot of people I know, like I think like, oh, they're just using racism as, a way to create more division among people. For some people, that is still the main reality. And so it is about going and asking these people, what is your experience? And then tying it back because there is a connection between 9/11 and racism. What is that connection? That connection is the fact that there is an overarching system that uses two different things, two different mechanisms to oppress and to take away dignity. And what we want to do is figure out how we can work together. And so I will extend some of my energy, emotional time, resources to this cause, such that this cause can also add to mine because we're eventually trying to get to the same level. This has to be a lot more intentional than it has been so far. So far, there has been so much dismissal, really, of um, each other in the causes that we feel are really important. Um, that should be the primary focus of every truth movement, whatever the subject is. Every liberation movement, every resistance movement should be to try to understand the soul of the person who is also affected by the same system of oppression. Um, sorry, just close the chat. To
Okay.
join as a participant. Oh, yeah. I don't know if I can make you a participant. Let
Real
me
quick,
see.
two other things or three other things. Your fact in music, we've talked about getting into the arts to try to bypass the cognitive dissonance. That's fantastic. You're using music. Sandra does that as well. Just hats off to you guys that do that. Um, last two things I wanted to ask you about two famous Italians for us in the 9/11 Truth movement. One of them, Ferdinando Impasamoto, which did a whole, he was a
Yeah,
Supreme Court judge. He did a whole lot on Gladio. And
yeah.
then President Francesco Cossiga, who said some pretty outrageous things back in the early years. I don't know if you're familiar with either of them or could speak on that real quick, and that's all. Thank you.
Um, I'm not. I couldn't speak too much in terms of their contributions. I unfortunately have been very uprooted from Italy since I left in 2013 because I was in New Mexico for 2 years before going to Wellesley. I was in another school called United World College, um, where they build like the leadership for the future, la di la, and then most of these kids go to work for IMF and Goldman Sachs and stuff. But it means that I've been just away from Italy from a long time. But I do know that quite a few Italians have actually made significant contributions. I know Imposimato passed away whilst I was at Wellesley, I believe. Um, I've reached out to Massimo Mazzucco
Hmm,
not
that's
long
another one.
ago.
Yeah.
That's something that I could use some help with. Like, if you guys have any contacts with Italians that are in the truth movement or that otherwise would be interested in trying to promote this artistic contribution, because I've been so uprooted from Italy. It's like I'm a stranger in my own country
Yeah.
at this point. So it's like it's hard for me to even like know who to reach out
Yeah.
I could
Kristen?
send,
to.
Yeah.
I,
Because I was gonna say Years ago, I used to volunteer for architects and engineers with the translation team, used to coordinate it. And so there is, if you go to the YouTube channel on under the AE banner, you go to translations. We've had 30 languages. Italian is one of them. And I think Italian was pretty high up there with the amount of videos we translated.
That's awesome.
It
I
should
should.
be in the vicinity of, well, the main languages have about 50 and over. Italian, maybe, I don't know, Gene can maybe pull it up. He's better at this than I am. At least that would give you material in Italian that was translated, like all the AE videos, explosive evidence, all the David Chandler stuff, like all, anyways, you can check it out. But anyways, to use that as a resource, that's if you're looking for Italian or any other language for that
Yes,
matter.
please. Could you please share the link?
Yeah, I'll just let Gene pull it up, and he'll put it in the chat.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And
Another opportunity is the hub that you
and
and Jean created.
yeah, but that needs to I mean, Europe is not very it's still focused mostly on North America, but you're right. Yes, we as it expands, there would be more activists. But I do have still contacts for some of my Italian translators, and I haven't had that for them in a while because AE doesn't translate their material anymore, and I haven't done that for a very long time. But um, I can check back with them and see if any of them are still active and would like to, get in touch with you. And so
That would
that's,
be so amazing.
yeah, yeah, I know a couple that might be really interesting there.
In the chat, I privately sent you Massimo Bazzuco's email address. I had asked him if he'd do any more work on it, and he said, I spent 12 years, I'm done. But maybe you can have some.
I did contact him. I think he does the vibe I got. You understand what like vibe
Yeah.
means?
Hmm.
Is that he's a bit like worn down. So I sent him
Hmm.
my video and he was like, "Yeah, you can post it in the comments. This doesn't add any new information." I was like, "Oh,
Okay.
okay."
Oh my gosh, that's
It's-
depressing.
I get it. I get it. It's,
Yeah,
work.
yeah.
It wears you down after a while.
Hmm.
He's done his job.
Yeah. And
Um,
one more question was, where are you in Great Britain?
I'm in London at the
You're in
moment.
London? Okay.
But as I said, I feel very uprooted as a human being. Like I've scattered my heart um, in various places around the world, and I'm trying to figure out how to sort of also just like weave all these pieces together just
Hmm.
in my life.
Yeah. Well, we have some
Um,
contacts in Great Britain, so I was asking because if you wanted to catch up with them in person, I don't know how far away from you they'd be living, but doesn't hurt to try, right?
Gotten in contact with Paul Simon
Right. Okay.
Keeley.
Yeah.
Um,
Kayla, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
He was the main
is
one I was thinking of, but there are quite a few others.
Yeah, Matt
um,
Campbell.
Oh yeah, Matt
uh,
Campbell. Yeah.
oh, Matt
Hmm.
Count. That would be it would be cool to meet Matt.
Yeah, no kidding. Anyways, I'm just putting that out there. So just any ways
Thank
I
you.
can think of that can help you connect to either Brits or Italians.
That'd be awesome,
Yeah. Okay.
actually.
Sounds good.
Thank you so
No
much.
problem. I should let David speak because he's had his hand up for a while.
David's big on doing outreach on campus.
Yeah. Yeah, you're
Yeah,
singing his song there.
yeah. Can you folks hear me?
Yep.
Hmm.
The first thing I need to say is I lived in McAfee Hall, 71, 72. You know what McAfee Hall is. I lived
I
at
do
Wellesley
know what
College.
McAfee Hall is.
um,
As a student?
yes, I was a student. It was my senior year. Yeah. MIT, Wellesley, Cross, whatever.
Okay.
It was a great experience. Now MIT is half men, half women. When in my class, it was 16-1. I'm a normal person. I went to a public high school. Half of the people in my high school were female. I was used to having female friends, but that was not so easy with 16-1. Anyway, but I particularly appreciated your um, hoping we could get by the internecine resentment in our movement. That's my main complaint against our movement, is that it's much more important to people to hate people who disagree with them in the movement or hate the perpetrators than it is to establish bonds with people who they have enough agreement with. And um, I'm I am I'm treated better in the 9/11 Truth Movement, although I'm not treated well, than I am by leadership of the climate crisis movement. I am the first American to serve a sentence for civil disobedience on the climate issue. And they hate me because I advocate Gandhi, and Gandhi always pled guilty. And they twist what I say. They say, well, you say everybody has to plead guilty. And I never say that at all. But the more important thing about Gandhi is that um, he wanted to make sure people did not hate the adversary. And almost all truthers really hate the perpetrators. And in fact, they're mainly motivated by hatred. And that is a terrible weakness. Um, Gandhi's term for satyagraha is holding fast to the truth, or putting your whole weight on the truth. But my new version of it would be trying to minimize the frustration of the adversary. And I've gotten arrested with a lot of really good people who are sort of polite enough to the authorities, but they still want cause frustration in the adversary, and that is a weakness, terrible weakness. The other thing I want to raise is that my biggest I had my differences with A&E, although never in their analysis. It was because I actually proposed 70 different work teams while I was there. And once I got thrown out, they shut down all the work teams. And I just think it's so important to develop personal relationships with people you're working with. And that hasn't, I mean, some people are very gregarious in this movement, but generally they're more intellectuals and researchers, even if they're not professors. They do research. And I'm terrible at research. Well, I'm not proud of it, but I'm terrible at research. I'm terrible at the computer. So, you know, it I'd like to be able to be in touch with you. I guess all I need is your email, right?
Um, yes. Let me see. Let me just think. Did I share it with Susan? Did I
Yeah,
share it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
okay.
so
So she can give it to me. That's fine.
that
Yeah.
would work. I think to comment on that is that it's a delicate balance between, obviously human situations happen where, like in any human aggregation, starting with the family, and when you work so much with people, sometimes it kind of starts getting like family with all of like the conflicts of the case. So in this, as we go on with our truth and liberation movements, much emphasis should also be placed in um, interpersonal skills and conflict resolution skills, definitely, where it is very important to keep collaborating, but also to have boundaries and to be able to set them in a way that doesn't hinder the ultimate goal, which is to, again, try to make as many connections as possible and trying to bridge the understanding of what it means to become free um, from this abuse of power. Um, yeah, so it's definitely tough, but I hope that that will become a focus going forward, even trying to reach the youth, like trying to reach young people, which is vital right now for the 9/11 movement, especially, um, will mean that we have to become uncomfortable with our own convictions about a lot of stuff in order to be able to reach them and in order to um, to pass the torch, to the next generation.
A little bit more.
Pardon?
I have a little bit more.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Gandhi's answer to the question of how to touch hearts is suffer cheerfully in jail to touch hearts. And I'm really hated by the leadership of nonviolence in this country, not all, but most, because they're Americans. They want something for nothing. They don't want to serve time in jail. I don't mind if leadership doesn't want to serve time in jail, but they don't respect courage enough in order to find the people who would be willing to serve time in jail.
I think I think you'll find that ego manifests in different ways for different people. So people on the front lines are sometimes also motivated by ego, right? And courage, I think there's different ways to define it. And sometimes it's
Absolutely.
courageous to do what is more efficient. And that's something I'm not really good at. For example, like I think I've been extremely inefficient and probably still am with like most of what I'm doing, but because yeah, I have to grapple with my own ego as well. And that's a process. I think one has to be very kind to themselves and keep oneself accountable. And again, um, be able, however, to communicate with others and create those bonds nevertheless, and refrain from like judging so much, which I still do a lot. And it's okay. It's again, it's a process, but as long as there's the good intention of mending what's been torn, because that's just advantageous to the abusers, like that we're torn and that we are against each other and that we don't talk and that we accuse each other and yeah, and maybe not assuming that we're hated. Like yeah, there's friction, but um I think I think not wearing that friction or those like not wearing those conflicts as badges of honor for like that doesn't mean anything. It's just an ego thing, right?
Yeah. I've said for a very long time that anybody who will have a civil dialogue with me about the evidence about 9/11 is a hero of mine. Because as you know, most people who don't already agree absolutely refuse to have civil dialogue about the evidence.
Yeah. I think many people refuse to have conversations about different things. Again, it's about finding the common denominator. Sue has her hands up, says in the chat.
There we go. Yeah. I don't know when my computer died. Apologies to everybody that the recording got interrupted. And so I've rejoined as a participant instead of host on my phone. So I don't know if somebody already raised this question, but here in Boston 9/11 Truth, we have found that people of our generation who were adults when 9/11 happened are less receptive than the youth who don't remember the events. They were too young to remember the original events of 9/11. But it sounds like you had not really the same experience as what we thought was the case. that the youth of, because how old are you? You weren't even born yet, were you?
I was, yes, I was 5 years old, and I remember it. I remember all the channels on TV changing to the same thing, and me going to my mom, the TV is broken. And then she came into the room and she was like, oh, there's gonna be a war. And I was like, what's war? By the way, I've also written a series which I'm going to start publishing. So if you want to follow my Medium account, that's, I think, where I'm going to put this series where I just like get into the juicy details of this whole Wellesley extravaganza. And maybe it can be published on other websites as well. I don't know. However you guys think would be best. It might turn into a book eventually. I'm more or less halfway. Um, this is why I'm saying this. This is why I'm saying this, that I've been trying to express about weaving together the movement is really important, because there's a window now that's amazing where the youth actually are all for this stuff. Like there's something in the air where people have seen that it's all a farce, but they can't quite put their fingers on stuff. Like they don't have the tools, they don't have the coordinates, but they know it's all a lie. So it's up to us to reach people in the emotionally correct way, such that the youth picks up the torch without inhibition, because they don't have inhibitions. Like if any of you is in the meme space, do you guys want to know what memes are at all?
Yeah.
There's so many memes about like 9/11 and the towers falling and like Bush doing it and the FBI listening to you on the computer. Like this is stuff that is becoming part of not even so underground pop culture at this point. It
Yeah.
is about coordinating the people who have access to these audiences in such a way that the information gets to them in the correct way. So literally, if I had one request from this group, if any of you have connections and contacts with people who have had significant involvement with the media industry or with the surveillance industry, who are sociologists, who are game theorists, who have a heavy hand in social media management, or who know people who have worked in social media. This is about building channels of communication and exchange among people who are on different fronts of collective liberation from power abuse, of which 9/11 is one aspect. This is what it's about. And so if we can all bring all of our energy into thinking, okay, how can we make another Toronto hearings type thing, but where we have climate activists and we have truth activists from 9/11 and COVID and people on indigenous liberation movements, like that's so important. Um, all these people have to come together such that a new kind of documentary, a new kind of piece of information is made that blends elements of it, saying we're not even saying that this is true or this is not true. We're saying that all of these things which are now being suppressed and intentionally broken up into pieces, we're actually going to all put them in the same box and let people discuss in what way, in their opinion, they're connected. And those connections, as in a Reddit system, may be on blockchain such that it's unalterable and it's completely accessible by everybody. I don't know. I'm just like thinking off the top of my head. This is how you beat the game. Does that make sense?
Well, it sounds like what you're describing is, and I would definitely agree, but it sounds like what you're describing is that we are in the midst of an information war.
Oh, that's been the case. But
Yeah.
we have a key to solve the war now.
Mm-hmm. And we need to engage that information war to win the war.
We have to engage it, but we have to undo it. like we have to engage it in a way that basically undoes it, and we have to always assume that we're being COINTELPRO'd somewhere along the line, which we have been and which we are being COINTELPRO'd and MK Ultra'd all along, right? Because the they know like that this power structure like is so fragile. They're walking on like a razor blade.
Mm-hmm.
This is why they invest so much money and time and energy in controlling these information systems, because if they lose control too much, it's over. And that's why they always have to come up with a new war, a new genocide, a new whatever. And like we're all living through these constant crises, which are basically to keep us distracted and to keep us from coordinating. So the way to engage in that war is by knitting and weaving and building those connections, and even across like the most unthinkable of like lines, like conversation on like gender in 9/11, 9/11 and racism, climate change in 9/11, 9/11 and child abuse and trauma and psychology, 9/11 and personal trauma and collective trauma, and how does that make sense? Like all of these conversations have to happen and appear or move around in sort of like a database that is easily accessible and um easily accessible, and where people can then make their own connections in different ways, such that we all see that everybody sees that it's one big fight.
I think what you're describing is what Truth Action Project, it's a segment of the 9/11 Truth Movement that broke off to the action groups, but they really focused on bridge building with other topics. I think that's exactly what you're talking about. They're just starting in the very first steps of ultimately what you're talking about on a bigger level. But that's great. Thank you.
Can you send the link for it, please?
It,
Oh,
it's,
Truth Action Project.
yep,
Awesome.
like Trina Maria is the head of that. We could connect you with her too.
Oh no, wait. Oh, great. Yes. Thank you. Thank
Mm-hmm.
you for that.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris has his hand up.
Yeah. Hello there. Yeah, I was kind of on and off in some of your presentation. Did you get any pushback from your professors and wanted to do a report on Building 7? Did they were they upset?
Yes.
They
Like,
were.
please leave my class. Please just go to the Peace and Justice Department. Uh,
But how did you convince them to let you do it? Because some professors just wouldn't have allowed it.
well, I think that I would have caused too much of a ruckus if they
Oh,
actually wouldn't let me do it.
well,
Like
that's
I
yeah.
was, like I think they realized early on that I was gonna be trouble, and so they just like pacified me by just like kind of letting me do it, but not really.
Did they give you did they give you did they retaliate against you, like give you a bad grade or something? That you didn't
They
find that at
couldn't.
all?
I don't think I got anything less than a B minus
Oh,
ever,
oh, okay.
like in any class.
But because just so you know, we've had college students that have joined our Boston 9/11 Truth Movement, and first what happens is they're all gung ho. You know, my friend Mike Carey found one, and he attended a couple of meetings, and then all of a sudden he just switches on us and he says, "Don't copy me on any more of the emails you send out." And then I send him an email by mistake, and he'll send an email back getting all upset. I told you not to send any emails. So just so you know, a lot of that's what we found in the past, where students feel if they participate in something like this, the school could expel them or take retaliation against them. And so you're very brave for doing this. Just so you know, I don't know if have you heard of other students doing the same thing as you, or
Right
running.
now,
Yep.
if you want to support this, if you want to support 9/11 Truth, right now what I would do is go support Palestine activists on college campuses.
Yep.
what I would do right now is support people who are protesting for Palestine, who are denouncing Israel, because that at this point in history is the forefront of it. And we have to be very we have to pay attention to recognize what is the current hot thing that's being repressed.
So
That's
so
very
so why
important.
why is this an issue now and it wasn't 10 years ago? What happened to the how come college students weren't being activists for Palestine 10 years ago?
They always
October
They're
were,
7th.
doing it now.
since no since Israel's inception, and even before that, people
Hmm.
were always protesting Palestine. People were
Right.
always protesting Israel,
But you
and
didn't
we're
have the
always
massive, well, you didn't have the massive movements on college campuses as you
because
do now.
because right now it is just so outrageous that
Hmm.
is it like this is there's no justification. But in 20 when I was in Wellesley, and I was even sleeping on it to an extent because I hadn't paid attention to Palestine as much. As to me, Palestine was another example of colonialism, right? Um, Together with Congo, together with um, most of the Middle East, together with South America. Like that was one other of those nations. There was like this much more complex, which is not complex, narrative about like the history of Jewish people and how like they deserve a state and blah blah blah. But in 2018, there was a Great March of Return, and they killed 200 people and
Yeah.
maimed another, I don't know how many hundreds.
Well,
And
I
so,
think we have a new news media now where mainstream legacy media is definitely falling and everybody's listening to
absolutely.
podcast
And
influencers, right?
Palestine is the reason for that. Right
Yeah.
now, what's happening in Palestine is the reason for this process. And everybody who's in any truth movement should really, really, really pay attention to that and talk about that and really weave in the discourse with that. Israel, like I cannot speak precisely to this because I've decided to focus obviously on like Building 7 and the
So
Twin Towers.
a lot of the professors align themselves with the activists now on campus for the
Yes,
Palestinian cause. Yeah.
yes,
And they see the atrocities that Israel has committed. And of course, one of the one of their big culprits is they're definitely complicit in the 9/11 crimes.
absolutely. That's what I was trying to say. This is
Yeah,
exactly what I'm trying to say. We always have to pay attention to the points of contact in any cause. Right now is the perfect time to talk about how 9/11 intersects with the tragedy of the Palestinian genocide and with how Israel was completely complicit in the enactment, carrying out of 9/11 to the extent that it was, to the extent that we know, in ways that are also extremely tactful and careful to separate, anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism, because a lot of people, unfortunately, even in the truth movement, tend to not be too careful about it, which means that the 9/11 truth movement as a whole is discredited as anti-Semitic. That's another thing that we just have to be a little bit more conscious of. But this is the time to do that. Like, one thing that the 9/11 Truth Movement can do right now is contact Palestine activists and build as many bridges as possible in that respect to show that the oppression of Palestine is
yeah. So
direct consequence.
I just wanted to close my question there with a comment. So even in the 9/11 truth movement, I'm always learning stuff. Um, I, I I actually think that there's military tribunals going on that have actually prosecuted some of the 9/11 perpetrators. And one thing I stumbled upon just last week is that you know both Donald Rumsfeld and Colin Powell died within 6 months from each other. Donald Rumsfeld died June 29th, 2021, and Colin Powell died October 18th, 2021. I just think those dates are pretty close. And I just think there might be something there. Of course,
The, I,
Yeah, I know. I just wanted to
we don't
point
know.
that
Yeah,
out. I wanted
but
everyone else in the meeting to hear that too, but I don't know if people knew that, but I just think that they both happened to die pretty close to each other within 6 months. That could be a coincidence or on
who
purpose.
knows what info went to the graves? But
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah, and of
definitely.
course
So,
they don't close down Guantanamo Bay. That Biden can't shut it down. It's been open. So you know. Okay,
I see.
well other people can have their questions now. I just thought I'd tell you.
Thank you so much for your questions, and thank you so much for
Sure.
bringing up that point because this was
Yeah.
important to bring up. Alfred and Susan.
Yeah, this goes right into our agenda items that we were going to discuss after we stopped recording. Doesn't preclude you from listening in or not, but one of the things that I don't know without screen sharing now that you'll get to see, but there are a number of peace rallies in Boston taking place as we speak. Newton, Boston. We had a list. I think Sue has it. And Newton Center is to. I guess it was today from 3:45 p.m. But it's been something I've been trying to rally the troops around and get volunteers for because it's very much. I mean, I agree entirely that the whole Gaza story plays right into 9/11 truth. And, the best way to approach um, the Palestinian demonstrations, I'd be curious as to what your opinion would be. We have signs that say, Boston 9/11 truth for peace. We portray ourselves as a peace group. And I don't know if there's a more poignant set of messages that we could get across that hey, look, we're out here, we support you guys, and we don't want to dissipate your message with ours, but we are, Boston 9/11 truth. I don't know if that makes any sense to you, but
Yeah, I think beyond the research aspect that I think architects and engineers and lawyers have been most active on. I think what's also missing from 9/11 Truth Movement now is a coherent narrative writing that just takes and summarizes and renders easily accessible the information that we do have with respect to, for example, Israel's involvement in 9/11. So we have like bits and pieces, right? Like dancing Israelis on the other side of the Hudson River, or just like looking at the financial ties between Mossad and FBI, CIA, and the fact that some of the hijackers possibly trained with like I'm talking, but I don't actually know very well. So I think the main thing to do would be to find the people who have focused on this aspect, contacting them, compile the information, and then getting someone to write that information in a narrative way that's easily accessible, that leaves up open questions. So it's important to ask questions and make assumptions, right? Instead of making assumptions, get the information, ask the questions, and then connect the questions that have been asked and the information that we have to the fact that, well, and this is why we're giving billions and billions to Israel to murder Palestinians. So and then once we have that piece of information that's condensed and easily digestible, just send it all over to every pro-Palestine movement that there is, and there will be directories such that this is sort of like the piece of information that is accessible and that can say, okay, we can like work on this front such that our goal is achieved. So I don't know who would be the foremost expert at this time, living expert on Israel and 9/11 specifically. Is this a
Richard
person
Gage.
that
He,
Richard
he
Gage?
he already wrote an article, did a demonstration on the parallels between 9/11 and Gaza.
So I'm not specifically talking about the parallels in terms of like the event of October 7 itself. Like I know it was most likely like a false flag attack, and there was foreknowledge of the event, and which secret services and the military ignored. I'm not talking specifically about that. I'm talking about someone who is also very knowledgeable of the overall history of Israel and its ties to, like, the ties of Mossad to CIA, FBI, the way in which possibly the financing, like these are all bits and pieces that, like, as a movement we don't have because the information never really like truly came out, right? But if there is someone who can stitch together the little information that we have and talk about how Israel as an entity, first of all, is a geopolitical asset, that is clear to everyone. But then to describe how this geopolitical asset has such an influence on the inner political workings of the United States that the enactment of 9/11 was possibly in conjunction or primarily carried out by Mossad agents with the help of people within the United States government. That's the kind of information that we need to give to Palestinian activists to show that if we all coordinate to push for a 9/11 investigation, this will weaken those spots in government that maintain that relationship the way it is. I'm not entirely sure, and this is just going off of intuition, but my sense is that even within the deep state, there are factions, right? It's not like the deep state is like one big coordinated like blob that always agrees with itself. No, there's probably deep states within the deep states, like teams that try to outsmart each other and gain more control over like the huge budget that the DoD has or whatever. So it would really be to find the people who have an inside scoop on this stuff. Sibel Edmonds, for example, right? Uh, Indira Singh, maybe. Who else comes to mind?
Susan Lind.
Pardon?
Susan Lindauer.
See, you guys know a lot more. So there's in the document that I sent, it's called Conspiracy versus Coincidence. There's like a bunch of points. You guys know a whole lot more than I do, most likely. But there's starting points for investigations. There are people who were on the forefront of the intelligence community investigations and the way that those were abused. The investigations on the financial operations that were going on inside the Twin Towers when they were destroyed. All this information is scattered. I had to do so much work, so much hard work to find the very primary sources to figure out who is this person, what are they saying, like go into like very like blurry videos to hear Indira Singh talk about what she was doing at JP Morgan, etc. Like all this like another really important job to do is getting all the people who know the stuff about this and just recompile all this information in a way that is easily accessible and easily, just a lot of work. That's actually a lot of work. I'd be happy to do some of that work with some guidance. But yeah, we just have to have access to those people in order to reconstruct sort of like the all the context around it, and to show that like this is how the deep state operates. This is why the military does the Solari report, like the fact that the DoD has never passed an audit, like looking into who the heck directs Department of Defense money, right? Like that's huge, and that has everything to do with 9/11 and with why it happened and who the people were who then moved funds a certain way and how funds moved from the DoD to Israel. Like who are the people who are making those decisions? Who are the politicians that went through the revolving doors of Pentagon contractors, et cetera, et cetera? All that nitty gritty stuff, and I imagine that is mostly to do with contractors, DoD, NSA, CIA, FBI, like, yeah, just intelligence blob, Hydra monster. Um,
Yeah, that's
because
like a really important meeting for us to have and tie that together because my head is just flooded right now with speakers on the Palestinian movement who have spoken out and wanting to go back and look at them and seeing if they're tying anything to 9/11. I'm sure others on this call can think of people, but right now I'm just like not sure which ones tied the two together. Yeah, so that sounds like
Whitney Webb. Sorry, I just thought, pardon me. Yes, Whitney Webb is a huge one. She did One Nation Under Blackmail, and her work is basically looking at how there's an entire operation of sexual blackmail going on within the inner workings of the deep state. Like how they work is they sexually blackmail each other to accomplish certain things, and like Israel is apparently like the biggest safe haven for convicted uh, rapists and pedophiles. Like there's so much to just
yeah.
dig into and look at, and yes, basically what we have to approach Palestinian activists with is, okay, this is how my angle is going to strengthen your movement and weaken Israel. This is the important bit, because there are factions within the deep state, within the United States, that probably are not very happy that Israel has such a grip. And so then it's playing the political game of like what those who those parties are, and weakening them, and pushing the 9/11 our 9/11 narrative as saying this is what happens when a state becomes captive of, not even of Israel, because again, being conscious of like anti-Semitic tropes is very important. Israel and Jewish people have been used, right? Like these people are used as a pawn on the geopolitical international chess, and the narrative that they have to absorb all the time is and they're believing that we're the victims, and so like we're gonna play exactly the part that we need to play for these other people who don't give a damn, who don't give a crap. They're just getting richer and richer and richer because they can just steal trillions of dollars off of the Department of Defense or whatever. Like
Well,
this is the angle.
it's important to also see if we can get a rabbi because, there's anti-Zionist rabbis.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's a lot of them. There's anti-Zionist Orthodox Jews in Israel that are speaking out. So it is so important that we have people within the movement really reaching out to um, all of these very important players in the resistance movement, and really building like information, like building pieces of information that are easily digestible, that sort of shows you Israel is a state that is being used geopolitically by certain people within the US because this way they can get very, very, very rich off of wars that they program and then they execute.
Yep.
This has to be sort of like.
That's it in a nutshell, what you just said.
I'd like to add one thing. We were going to discuss tonight the movie Occupied by Stu Peters and Ken O'Keefe. And I listened to that the other day, and it's really rattled my cage because it goes so far into the Jews being a problem in this world, and that Hitler was a good guy and had really done the right thing. And I was shocked to see that Cynthia McKinney was in the podcast as well. And they do make a lot of good points. I mean, I didn't dismiss it entirely, but the idea, I mean, we're going to get hung with the anti-Semitic label if you even go near this stuff.
But this is the time, this is exactly the time that we can take advantage and like get that label off of us, because although it is really unfortunate, like I've not listened to those arguments, but just saying Jews are a problem this way, that's like incorrect, like from the start. If anything, some Jewish people are using other Jews to cover up for their own BS. Like, and many Jews understand, like, even Jews understand this. Like, this is something that can be easily undone if we take the responsibility of admitting that some within the movement have not been very tactful and have not been very conscious of the way that they have communicated about it. But right now is a time when everybody is seeing that anti-Semitism doesn't work anymore as an excuse to not talk about stuff.
Well, listen to Occupied. I mean, I think it will do more harm to the 9/11 truth movement, even if there was some truth in the podcast.
I particularly like don't want to engage with anything that says that Hitler was a good guy. Like, it's probably just not worth it, right? Like, we have to also just make like we have to make some like rule of thumb decisions at some point, like, and it's not strategic, it's not useful, it's like, even and I'm suspending judgment, like I'm doing that suspension of judgment thing when I say, oh, maybe I don't know, right? Maybe I don't know, but there's a better way to make a similar point that doesn't involve because sometimes, like, you have to think these movements of ours maybe are actually infiltrated by agents who are paid really good money to make arguments like these and to place them in a way that is appealing. And these are COINTELPRO agents. We can't have that. Like, no, just like let's all sometimes, like, the path of least resistance sometimes is truly the best, if that makes sense. Like, it takes like a bit of intuition and a bit of gut feeling to say, no, we don't need that. That's probably infiltration, to be fair. And yeah, and it just shows that we're all human and we all have biases, and we all might also, like, what's the word? There's definitely a lure in trying to attribute evils to something easily identifiable. Unfortunately, human evil, in my opinion, is a result of unprocessed trauma, individual and collective. This is my very personal contribution to that. But that is easily exploited when then you say, oh, the Jews or what. No, I don't think. I think we have to be very careful. And in fact, I think I think another thing the truth movement could do that it would be really useful is actually taking responsibility for the times where that has not been treated with enough tact and respect and conscientiousness, and actually do a what's it called? An inventory. Let's do an inventory of the times where the truth movement maybe has overextended itself, or members of the truth movement have overextended themselves such that the image that came out of it was, this sounds anti-Semitic. Like we have used Jews instead of Zionists, for example. Let's be careful with words. To the extent that it makes sense, to the extent that, to the extent that maybe we can say, oh, was this for real, or was this a psychological operation, COINTELPRO, to like disrupt us from the inside? I don't know. I'm not very privy to this, but it's very, very important that now we seize this moment correctly, responsibly, with with knowledge, with knowledge of what we're saying, and maybe it is useful to do more research, but I think it's fair to say that even like it's never a group of people, right? It's certain individuals within a group of people who then scapegoat the group of people. I think that's a simpler explanation that works.
Well, I think root cause for most 9/11 truth activists has been anti-war, anti-imperialism, that exceptionalism, that a certain country has a right to go and invade other countries, pro-liberty, pro-free speech. So I think once we look at our roots, for most of us, what got us interested in becoming involved in 9/11 for reasons of who we were before 9/11, that we were interested in liberty, we were interested in stopping wars, we were interested in ending imperialism. Once we investigate that, that leads very much to the Palestinian cause, that every individual has a right to their own autonomy, and sharing the freedoms that are supposedly available to other citizens in their domain. And so that kind of brings the link together. And who could be anti-Semitic when you also look at what Nazi Germany did? That's the same thing. The expansionism of the Nazis invading other countries. You can argue that, Germany was in a terrible position following World War I, and they needed to nationalize, and they found a strong leader who brought nationalization together. But that doesn't mean that what they did under the Nazi regime was the right thing to do. That just means that, Western powers push them to it. But that doesn't excuse it. And so when you look at all those roots of where did I come from before all this, it kind of ties it together. Does that make any sense, or am I rambling?
Absolutely. No, it makes total sense. And it should be extended also to look at how liberty, the way that we conceive liberty sometimes also has limits. And we should very much investigate our own assumptions with that, because our American liberty right now means, enabling foreign abusive leaders to control the extractions of minerals in places that are undergoing extreme poverty for our benefit. So it's a Palestinian cause, it's a Congolese cause, it's a Sudanese cause, it's a Bolivian cause, it's a
Right.
Colombian cause. All of these are tied together. And the fact that some of these get more recognition than others, again, is unfortunately a function of how our information system works. Can I just ask? Oh, never mind. Sorry. Yes, but that made complete sense. And again, there will be time. There will be time to properly investigate all of these issues in a way that is systematic once we have formed like this system of checks and balances of different perspectives, um, where everybody's participating and enlightening each other in a way that's balanced. Yes, Chris
Yeah, I
has.
just so do you have any 9/11 Truth activist friends that live in the Boston area?
No, personally.
Oh, because we certainly could use some help in our Boston 9/11 Truth. Now, one thing we like to do is we like to get out in public and just pass out just simple literature. I'll just let me just screen share the flyer that I've passed out, and we've passed out. I actually created it for the group, but it just highlights recent university study finds fire did not cause third tower collapse on 9/11. And then it talks about the Dr. Leroy Holsey study showing how building 7 could only come down in a controlled demolition. And then it talks about how the lawyers committee for 9/11 inquiry is very active in trying to get legal in investigation. And then it just goes on, why 9/11 still matters. $4.4 trillion taken away from American taxpayers, 1.2 million dead in Afghanistan, intelligence service, massive scale collection of private communications, indefinite detention, assassination of Americans are now permitted without charge. Those are the really and I mean our real mission is just to try to wake people up to well, have first of all have them question the official story, and then wake them up, and then we really succeed as a whole movement when we reach the tipping point where I think we're probably maybe 60% of all Americans now question the official story, and maybe next year it'll be 70%, maybe 10 years 80, and then maybe 20 years from now 100% we'll all know. And also to let people know what a false flag is, where false flags have been used all throughout history to get people to go to war. But I would be very cautious though to lead in with activism and just blame Israel for 9/11, because you have you can alienate a lot of people.
That's why I'm saying
Yeah,
that
yeah.
the work is to carefully compile the information that is available
Yeah.
and to make a case as to why it could be relevant.
Oh yeah.
And
Well,
and and just the geopolitical case, I think, is like very much strong enough. But then if you can link it to the evidence that we do have of
yeah.
Mossad Israeli involvement
So
in
yeah. So people that are waking up to 9/11 go through all different stages. I mean, some of them are really interested in the research, some of them aren't. I mean, the real important part is to get them to question the official story and not believe the official story. and then they realize, that this that the conspiracy theory, it really wasn't, it's really true after all, and just to wake people up. But yeah, it's too bad you don't have any friends that can help us with the activism, because we certainly need some more. you know.
Yeah, and I think a lot of what people ask is also, well, what do we do when people do know that it was a conspiracy, and then what? So like this work of compiling information in a way that is digestible, like rebuilding the archives, because I don't know if you guys know, but all the information that I had to go look for to do the conspiracy versus coincidence document is being scrubbed off the internet. So if you guys have databases, those have to be carefully kept intact, and that information re-uploaded on servers that are not corruptible, for example, uploaded on blockchain. If there's people who are um, um, able to access that technology, there's a lot of work to do. Basically, I could, my contribution could be, I could like write maybe like some of these ideas that I'm saying down, if any of you are interested, and then we could maybe
Yes.
like do a little work group to
Well,
to,
well,
to,
well,
to,
you
to
could,
try
you
and
could,
like systematize,
yeah, yeah.
because
I mean,
there's so much.
well, you might want to consider just compiling your own website, and then
So
actually,
much work.
downloading all these videos, so it's not linked to a YouTube video. So you have all the information. Wait, we had one researcher named Hamuka. He had 9/11 TV, okay, and you could go to his website, and about 10 years ago had all this great information, but now 90% of it's all gone, because he was thinking that YouTube wouldn't deplatform him. But I mean, there are 9/11 researchers that having your own website, and then finding the information and storing it on your own server, your own hard drive, and then
That's the issue. I don't know if
yeah.
anyone in the movement has access to incorruptible servers or um, blockchain access, because if any one person does it, again, it can be shadowed, uh, corrupted, buried, etc., etc. Uh, I usually not to use the term conspiracy, better use the term false flag. Yeah, I think rehabilitating conspiracy probably is like also good. Um, anyways, I'm really sorry. It is
It's
one.
so
It
late
is.
for
It is.
you.
It is 1 a.m. It is 1 a.m. for me here,
Oh,
and I probably have to go to sleep because I'm.
Oh,
I'm
it's
not. I'm not
time
gonna make much sense. I'm
ever.
not gonna make much
Oh,
sense otherwise. But I might. I might be able to join again.
where
Sometime.
where are you located again?
I'm in London,
Oh, London. Yeah.
but
We'd
I wanted.
love to have you on again anytime, as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I wanted to just say I th want to thank you so much for the attention and the support that I've received this evening. And I've been wanting to say a lot of these things on my mind for a long time. So the fact that you all stayed to listen to what I had to share means the world. And I look forward to start publishing the series, and also like start putting these thoughts together a little
If
bit
you
better.
could you share your Substack you mentioned? Or
It's the Medium, yes. So it's the on at the very top of the chat. It's the fourth thing I shared. So there's like a chunky link.
cool.
Um,
Thank you. Very nice to meet you.
thank you
Very
so
nice to meet you
much
all.
for joining us tonight. And yeah, this has been very enlightening. You've given us a lot of work to do.
Yeah.
Oh,
Thank you for that. I curse you
okay.
for that as well.
I've given myself a lot of work to do as well, but now I know that there's someone to receive it, so it's actually energizing. And I was like super tired, but it's energizing to know that if we start this work and maybe we have the contacts, we can really like get somewhere
Yeah.
and like
Yeah, let's
reignite.
work on an outline on getting organized on where we're going from here. That would be great. Keep in touch.
For sure.
And
Let me know when next meetings are, and hopefully I can join. Maybe not because they're quite late, but although I might be able to because I'm leaving my job in 2 weeks, so then I'm free again.
By the way,
thanks.
I'll be across the pond in January in Edinburgh.
Oh, okay, awesome.
My daughter lives there.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so if maybe we can hook up. I don't know.
Maybe that'd be lovely. That'd be absolutely lovely.
All
And
right.
great to see you, Kristen, again.
Great
Thank you
to
for all
meet
your
you.
work.
Long time.
Oh, is that Richard? Wait,
Yeah,
because there's like videos on top, but like some people are there's like, thank you, Richard. Thank you so much. Good to see you as well.
yeah. Thanks. Enlightening night. Thank you so much.
Susan,
Thank you,
maybe you
guys.
can unpin Kristen so that you can see everybody at the same time.
I'm not not as host
Oh,
anymore.
I'll
Oh.
unpin my wait. I think I think when I'll leave, someone's gonna have to be the moderator. I don't know
Oh,
what will
right.
happen.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
good night, everyone, and I look forward to be in touch again. Thank you so, so much from the depths of my heart,
Yeah,
and
thank you.
have a really nice evening.
It was really nice
Thank you
meeting
for all
you.
your work.
Light.
Thank
Thank you.
you. Bye
Take
bye.
care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
So, Sue, I think we got to zip
Oh, I
along
have to
on the
sign.
agenda items. Oh, there we go.
And I think Gene's recording right now. Maybe he wants to
Yeah.
stop recording.
Yep. Here we go.